Lila Carter ran down the street as if every second were a ticking time bomb. The heels of her cheap shoes squeaked from the third block, and with each hurried step, she felt the soles giving way. Fate seemed to mock her, first the broken-down bus, then the refused change on the subway, and now the desperate race to the glass tower where her life could change forever. The cold wind bit at her face, mixed with the smell of gasoline and burnt coffee wafting from a cart on the corner. Lila ignored the strange looks, the honking of car horns, and the muttered insults. Running in a tight skirt and a wrinkled blazer was hardly the most elegant sight of the morning. But dignity didn't pay rent, and that was what she needed most. As she crossed the street, she heard a sharp crack. Her right heel had finally snapped. Her body lost its balance, and she reflexively tried to steady herself. But the result was worse. She tripped and collided with someone coming in the opposite direction. Her purse burst open in an explosion of papers and coins. Lila fell to her knees on the rough asphalt, swallowing the pain and humiliation. The man she bumped into barely moved. He held his cell phone tightly, as if nothing in the world could disturb his composure. His dark gray suit draped over his shoulders like tailored armor. He glared at her with an irritated expression, as if she were nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle. "Watch your step," he said coldly, without even extending his hand. Lila gasped, trying to gather her crumpled resume and scattered coins. "Watch where I'm going. My heel's broken." She held up the broken piece in frustration. "Do you know what it's like to choose between paying for dinner or buying another pair of shoes? I bet you don't." The man kept his brow raised, indifferent. "If one leap defines your future, maybe you're in the wrong place." Her face burned. "And if arrogance defined character, you'd already be broke." This time, he let out a small sound, almost a chuckle, before turning and walking away without another glance. She watched him disappear into the crowd, teeth gritted, fighting the urge to scream. With no time to waste, she kicked off her other broken heel and limped toward the building. As soon as she entered the spacious lobby, its marble floor gleaming like a mirror, she felt the stares. Impeccable receptionists, rumpled security guards, and well-dressed applicants all turned to her as if she were a misplaced mistake. With firm steps, holding her ruined shoes in her hands, she walked to the counter. "Lila Carter. Interview for executive assistant." The receptionist examined her from head to toe, nearly choking at the contrast between the barefoot girl and the line of professionals in impeccable suits. But she typed her name into the system and pointed to the waiting room. Inside, 15 applicants settled into spotless chairs, exchanging smug smiles. Expensive perfume filled the air. Lila took a deep breath, grabbed her shoes, destroyed like war trophies, and sat down. It was then that she heard firm footsteps approaching. The conversation ceased instantly. Heads turned toward the door. When Lila looked up, her stomach sank. The man from the street. The one she'd collided with. But now, he wasn't just a stranger. He was Alex Harper, the CEO who would decide the future of everyone in that room. The silence in the room was heavy, as if each breath carried a weight. Lila's heart was pounding so hard she feared others might hear it. Alex Harper strode across the waiting room with the confidence of someone who owned not only the building but the very air the people breathed within. His eyes roamed over the candidates, lingering briefly on her bare feet and the worn shoes she held up as proof of defeat. For a moment, her expression revealed nothing, stone carved into a human form. One by one, the names were called, and the candidates entered the glass-enclosed room where Alex waited. The whispers that followed each exit were sharp, like knives hidden behind polite smiles. Most left pale, clutching their folders as if they had lost all hope. Lila tried to maintain her composure, but each tick of the clock felt like a hammer striking her nerves. She wanted to run, but her legs remained rooted to the spot. When her name was finally announced, her body moved almost instinctively. She entered the office, where sunlight streamed in through the tall windows, casting Alex in a gilded frame of authority. He sat behind a sleek desk, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on her. The room was so quiet she could hear the hum of the city below. "So," he said after a long pause, "you were the one who almost knocked me over this morning." His tone was calm, but the corners of his mouth suggested restrained amusement. Lila froze, her mind racing for the right answer. She could deny it, apologize, or pretend she didn't remember, but something inside her snapped. "Yes," she answered firmly. "It was me. And honestly, I don't regret it. I was late, my shoes broke, and everything seemed to be against me today. But I'm still here. I may not seem like the perfect candidate, but I know how to fight for what I need." Alex tilted his head, studying her as if she were an unusual puzzle. Most applicants begged, cajoled, or trembled under his gaze. But this girl, barefoot and disheveled, dared to stand her ground. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers slowly tapping the table. "Interesting," he murmured. The interview unfolded more like a duel than a conversation. Alex fired incisive questions, testing her resilience, her ability to think under pressure, her willingness to face failure. And Lila, despite the fear burning within her, responded with unvarnished honesty. She didn't sugarcoat her struggles, she exposed them like scars, each proof that she had survived. When she left, her heart was still racing, but her eyes no longer held the same weight of defeat. She didn't know if she'd impressed him or completely ruined his chances. All she knew was that, for the first time, she hadn't hidden who she truly was. Lila sat on a bench in the square in front of the building, gazing up at the imposing glass tower. The interview had been a whirlwind of adrenaline and candor. She didn't regret anything she'd said, but the feeling of having wasted the opportunity by being over the top was overwhelming. With a sigh, she opened her purse and found her cell phone, an old model with a cracked screen. She called her mother. "Hi, Mom." Her voice sounded more tired than she'd like. "I'm done with the interview. It was an experience." Before her mother could answer, she received an anonymous call. Lila hesitated, but answered. "Hello." The voice on the other end was formal and controlled. "Ms. Carter? My name is Sarah. I'm from the HR department at Harper International. Mr. Harper asked me to call and inform you that the executive assistant position is yours." Lila felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. She glanced at her phone screen to make sure she wasn't dreaming. "Sorry. What?" "He was very impressed with your perspective and attitude," Sarah continued. "Mr. Harper believes you'll bring a different energy to the office. He hopes to see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. to get started." Lila was speechless for a moment. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it would explode. She looked up at the tower, at the top, at Alex's office. I'll be there," she stammered. She ended the call with the HR representative and, with a trembling hand, dialed her mother's number again. "Mom," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I can do this. I got the job." The tears she'd been holding back all day finally came. Not of sadness, not of frustration, but of overwhelming relief. She wasn't just a girl with a broken shoe. She was Lila Carter. And her future was just beginning. The next day, Lila returned to the imposing glass tower, this time wearing a new pair of flats, though not entirely comfortable. Her heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and terror. The receptionist, who had eyed her suspiciously the day before, now smiled slightly. "Ms. Carter, your desk is on the 15th floor, across from Mr. Harper's office." As soon as the elevator doors opened, Lila entered a world of quiet efficiency and tailored suits. Her workstation was simple and organized, a stark contrast to her disorganized life. Before she could even sit down, a tall woman with perfectly coiffed hair and a sleek blazer approached. "So, you're the famous newcomer," she said, unsmiling. "I'm Victoria Reed, Senior Vice President of Corporate Relations. I've worked here for 10 years, so I know a thing or two about the unwritten rules. Just so you know, Mr. Harper values competence, not unconventional talent." Lila felt a rush of heat in her cheeks. "Noted," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Victoria looked her up and down as if inspecting a defective product. "Good. Because a lot of people are watching to see if you can keep up." With that, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking staccato against the polished floor. Lila sighed and sat down, feeling a nervousness settle in her stomach. Maybe Victoria was right. Maybe she really didn't belong here. But she was sure of one thing: she wasn't leaving without a fight. Over the next week, the unwritten rules became painfully obvious. Her colleagues, led by Victoria, treated her like a curious anomaly. Whispers followed her through the halls. A lost report earned her a collective sigh. A coffee stain on her notes was met with barely suppressed giggles. One afternoon, Lila was struggling with a complex spreadsheet. Her degree hadn't exactly prepared her for corporate finance, and the numbers were floating before her eyes. "Having trouble, newbie?" a voice asked behind her. It was a colleague named Mark, his smile a little too wide. "It's okay to admit defeat. This isn't a coffee shop." Lila looked up, frustrated. "I'm fine, thanks. I'm just trying to help," he said, but his tone was mocking. "Some of us know what we're doing. Others don't." Lila took a deep breath. She remembered her grandfather's words: "Life isn't about how hard you get hit, dear. It's about how many times you get up and keep going." She stood up, looking Mark straight in the eye. "I'm not one to give up. If some complex numbers scare you, maybe you're in the wrong place." Mark's wry smile faltered for a second, but he quickly recovered, laughing as he walked away. Lila returned to her spreadsheet, her determination renewed. She wasn't going to let them break her. Alex, meanwhile, watched silently from his glass-walled office. He watched Victoria dismiss Lila, watched Mark and the others try to undermine her. He watched her take a deep breath, lift her chin, and return to work. He realized her resilience intrigued him more and more. She wasn't just a hard worker, she was a fighter. He tried to focus on the reports, but his mind wandered again. "Why does she take up so much of my attention?" he wondered. One Friday afternoon, a power outage hit the building, abruptly halting all work. Emergency lights came on, casting long, ominous shadows. Most of the employees, relieved, headed for the exits, but Lila, ever diligent, stayed behind to save her files. "The power's out," Alex's voice said, startling her. He was standing in the office doorway, illuminated by the dim light. "I know," she replied. "I'm just saving my work. I don't want to be the reason a quarter of data is lost." Alex tilted his head, a slight smile on his face. "You're the only one here. Everyone else left 10 minutes ago." Lila shrugged. "My grandfather always says, the measure of a person isn't what they do when everyone's watching. It's what they do when they think no one's watching." Alex entered the office, the door clicking shut behind him. The hustle and bustle of the city was replaced by an eerie, intimate silence. "Your grandfather seems like a wise man." "Yes, he is," Lila said softly, her voice gaining strength. "He taught me everything important. How to fix a leaky faucet, how to budget on a shoestring, and how to tell the difference between a true friend and someone who just wants to borrow your tools." Alex sat in the chair in front of the desk, resting his elbows on his knees. "What does he do for a living?" "He's a jack of all trades," Lila replied, a fond smile on her face. "He has a saying for everything. When I broke my first bike, he said, 'If you never fall, you'll never learn to get up.' That's why I wasn't ashamed of my shoe that day. I knew it was just a lesson waiting to happen." Alex watched her, a look of genuine curiosity on his face. He had grown up in a world of wealth and privilege, where success was measured by straight A's and flawless public appearances. Lila's world was different, based on a kind of practicality and wisdom he had never encountered. "He seems like someone I wish I'd known," Alex murmured. "My father was a very different man. All business, all the time. He taught me to be perfect, because anything less would be a failure." "Well," Lila said lightly, "it sounds exhausting." Alex looked at her and, for the first time, laughed. Not a muffled sound, but a genuine, surprised laugh that filled the quiet office. "Yes, it is," he admitted. The power came back on, and the office lights hummed back to life, interrupting the moment. But something had shifted between them. For the first time, they saw each other not as a boss and an employee, but as two people with their own stories and scars. A few weeks later, the official invitation to the annual corporate conference in Chicago arrived. Alex was already confirmed. He was supposed to bring a senior manager, but something about Lila's quick thinking and unconventional perspective made him reconsider. He had a theory, one he needed to test. "Lila," he said, approaching her desk, his voice formal. "I need you to come with me to Chicago next week. I need someone to organize my schedule and my presentations." "You're coming with me." Lila's heart raced. She'd heard the whispers. The new girl? No way. The thought of proving everyone wrong filled her with pride. "Okay," she said, her voice a little shaky, but firm. The staff's reaction was immediate. The hallways filled with whispered conversations. Victoria shot her a glare that could curdle milk. "First she's Barefoot, now she's a fellow traveler," someone whispered. Lila held her head high, but every word stung. At the airport, she stood nervously next to Alex, her small, battered suitcase a stark contrast to his sleek designer suitcase. She felt exposed, as if her insecurities were on display for the world to see. "Don't worry," Alex said quietly, noticing how her fingers fidgeted in her bag. "This isn't a fashion show. What matters is what you can do, not how you look." Lila forced a small smile. "Easy for you to say. You belong here. I'm just trying not to trip over my own feet." Chicago was even more intimidating. The opening cocktail party was teeming with confident voices, expensive clothes, and people who carried themselves as if they owned the city. Lila, in her simple dress, felt invisible, or worse, scrutinized. A group of executives, led by a rival CEO, stared at her, whispering and smiling wryly as she passed. Her cheeks burned, but she pressed on, reminding herself, "I'm here to work, not to impress." During the main meeting, Alex handed Lila a set of graphs and asked her to prepare a quick summary. He expected a simple outline. But when she returned with her notes, she pointed out subtle inconsistencies in the data, details no one else had noticed. The discovery avoided what could have been a costly misunderstanding with potential partners. "Nice catch, Lila," Alex whispered, leaning in so only she could hear. "You just saved us a huge problem." Her lips curved into a faint smile. She was proving herself. That night, after a long day of events, they took a taxi back to the hotel. The city lights flickered through the car windows, casting shadows across Alex's face. He stole glances at Lila, who stared out the window, her expression thoughtful. Their shoulders brushed lightly with each turn of the car, and each touch sent a silent current through Lila. "Tired?" Alex asked softly. "A little," she admitted, turning to him. "But also invigorated. It's good to be challenged." "You thrive under pressure," he observed, a touch of admiration in his voice. "It's impressive." Lila felt a warmth course through her. "My grandfather says, diamonds are made under pressure, darling. And you're a diamond." She smiled, a sincere, easy smile that made Alex's chest tighten. He wanted to reach out, to brush her hair back from her face, but he restrained himself. The tension was building, a delicate, unspoken promise hanging in the air between them. Later that night, after dinner at the hotel restaurant, they found themselves walking down a quiet, dimly lit hallway. Lila, lost in thought, staggered a little. Alex, without a second's hesitation, reached out and steadied her, lingering on her arm for a moment longer than necessary. "Careful," he murmured, his voice softer than usual. Their eyes met. The light from a nearby window caught his gaze, revealing an intensity she'd never seen before. The moment lingered, a silent question hovering between them. Lila felt a shiver run down her spine, a mixture of apprehension and something undeniably arousing. She slowly pulled her arm away, her heart racing. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice a little breathless. Back at the hotel, a reservation mix-up had them in the same suite. "Mr. Harper and Mrs. Carter," the receptionist said, a little too loudly. "We've reserved a double suite for you." Alex and Lila looked at each other, stunned. I can find another hotel, Alex began, his voice a little strained. No, Lila said, a hint of laughter in her voice. Don't be ridiculous. We're adults. We can share a room for one night without turning it into a Hollywood drama. The tension in the suite was palpable. 2 beds, but the space felt smaller than it should have. Alex went to the bathroom to change, leaving Lila standing in the middle of the room, mentally replaying the day's events. When he emerged, wearing only pajama pants and a t-shirt, Lila felt her breath catch. Want to order room service? He asked, apparently unaware of the effect he was having. Sure, she said, hoping her voice sounded normal. They ate in comfortable silence, the conversation shifting from work to personal stories. Alex told her about his first job, a summer internship where he was almost fired for obsessing over a single detail. Lila told him about her grandfather teaching her how to use a hammer and about the first thing she ever built, a birdhouse that collapsed 2 days later. It looks like a very expensive birdhouse, Alex said, a smile on his face. My grandfather says it was a good lesson, Lila replied. He says if you never try, you'll never fail. But you'll also never have the chance to build something lasting. Alex looked at her, his gaze piercing. Lila, he said suddenly, his voice low and serious. Thank you for today. For everything. They were sitting on the couch, closer than they should have been. Alex reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. Lila's heart skipped a beat. He was looking at her with an intensity she'd never seen before. The moment seemed to stretch forever. He leaned in, and for a moment, she was sure he was going to kiss her. But just as their lips were inches away, Lila's phone vibrated with an alert. She jerked away, her cheeks flushed. I should probably go to bed, she said, getting up quickly. Alex looked at her, his expression unreadable. You're right, he finally said. I'm sorry. But as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Lila knew something had changed between them. Something real, something she couldn't hide in jest. The next morning, Lila and Alex returned to the office, a strange, unspoken tension lingering between them. Rumors had already spread like wildfire in the dry season. The whispers had a new, sharper tone. The word favoritism was on everyone's lips. Over the next 2 weeks, the silent tension blossomed into something more. Long nights of teamwork often turned into casual dinners. A shared look around the office began to mean more than just professional recognition. One night, after a particularly exhausting day of meetings, Alex walked Lila to her car. You know, he said, leaning against the door of her vehicle, I can't wait to get to work now. Lila smiled, and a genuine warmth ran through her. I can't tell if that's a compliment or an admission of a very boring life ahead of me. Alex chuckled softly, shaking his head. Definitely a compliment. Quite a compliment. You make everything less dull. He hesitated, then reached out and gently took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her skin. And you make me feel things I haven't felt in a long time. Lila held her breath. She squeezed his hand lightly. Likewise, Alex. They shared a moment of silence, the city lights twinkling around them like distant stars. It was a silent acknowledgement of the growing connection between them, a new, fragile bond forming in the corporate world. Another night, Alex found Lila still at her desk, struggling with a particularly difficult report. He offered to help, and they ended up staying late, working side by side. When they finally finished, well after closing time, Lila stretched and let out a weary sigh. I think my brain is officially fried, she said, rubbing her temples. Alex smiled, reaching across the table to gently massage her shoulders. The touch was unexpected, warm, and comforting. Lila leaned into him, closing her eyes for a moment. That feels so good, she murmured. You work too much, he said quietly. You deserve a break. His fingers lingered, a silent promise in their touch. It was a small gesture, but expressive, confirming the unspoken affection that was now a silent undercurrent in their professional lives. At the weekly department meeting, Victoria decided to act. Alex, she said, with a viperous smile. "Wouldn't it have made more sense to bring someone with more experience to Chicago? A senior manager, perhaps?" The room fell silent. Lila felt every head turn in her direction. Alex leaned back in his chair, his face taking on that cold, unreadable expression she'd seen on her first day. "Victoria," he said, his voice calm but as harsh as glass. "What exactly is your concern?" "Well," Victoria began, her tone dripping with false politeness. "Some people might question the criteria for selecting employees for important corporate travel, especially when that employee is so new." Lila felt her face turn red. It was like being judged for crimes she didn't commit. Alex slowly rose from his chair. "Let me make something very clear to everyone in this room," he said, his voice piercing the air. "Lila Carter earned her place in this company through talent, dedication, and competence. Her presentation in Chicago was exceptional and led directly to the prevention of a costly mistake. Her unconventional perspective is what we need moving forward." He looked at Victoria, his voice now a low growl. "Anyone who questions her qualifications should first examine their own results. Lila saved us from a multimillion-dollar business mistake. How many of you can say the same?" The room fell into a heavy silence. Victoria, visibly disturbed, turned red. Alex wasn't finished. "If anyone has any concerns about my management decisions, feel free to speak to me directly. Now, can we get back to the matters that really matter?" The meeting continued, but Lila barely heard a word. Alex's fierce defense had been so categorical that there was no room for doubt, at least not in the meeting room. The real problem was that his passionate defense only fueled the rumors already circulating. After the meeting, Lila ran to the bathroom, needing a moment to breathe. She was washing her hands when the door opened and Alex walked in. "Alex, this is the women's bathroom," she said, startled. "I need to talk to you," he replied, ignoring her statement. "About the meeting. Look, I appreciate you standing up for me, but you do realize that now everyone is convinced there's something going on between us, right?" Alex stepped closer. "What if there is?" Lila's heart skipped a beat. "Alex." "Lila, I can't stop thinking about you," he said, his voice low and intense. "In Chicago, in that room, I wanted to kiss you more than I wanted to breathe. And these past few weeks, seeing you, touching you, talking to you, it's only made things worse. I'm falling in love with you." Lila swallowed. "We can't have this conversation here. So where can we get it?" "Nowhere," she replied, but even to her own ears, her voice lacked conviction. Alex stepped forward. "You feel it too. I know you do." Lila looked into his eyes and saw something that terrified her: vulnerability. Alex Harper, the cold, calculating CEO, was exposing himself. "Of course I'm sorry," she whispered. "But that doesn't change the fact that this is complicated, dangerous." "Why?" "Because you're my boss. Because half the company already thinks I'm sleeping around to get ahead. Because if this goes wrong, it's not just a breakup. It's my entire career on the line." Alex gently touched her arm. "Lila, you make me want to be different, more human. I haven't felt that way in years." The words hit her like a punch in the gut. It wasn't just attraction. It was something deeper and scarier. 3 weeks after the trip to Chicago, a thick manila envelope appeared on Lila's desk. There was no return address, just her name written in capital letters. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a collection of photographs. She and Alex walking together through Chicago, him holding her coat over her shoulders, a photo of them laughing quietly in the hotel lobby. There were also photos of them having dinner after work and a blurry photo of him gently massaging her shoulders at the table. The photos were discreet but incriminating. At the bottom of the envelope was a simple note: "I know your little secret." Lila felt the blood drain from her face. The photos slipped from her trembling hands, scattering across the table like evidence of a crime. She quickly gathered them up and stuffed them into her purse, her heart racing. She spent the rest of the day in a state of controlled panic, trying to act normal as her hands shook every time she touched a document. She suspected Victoria, but had no proof. The next morning, she arrived at the office to find small groups of people whispering, conversations that abruptly stopped as she passed. The looks were not only curious but also critical. At 10:30 a.m., Sarah from HR arrived at her desk. "Lila, I need to talk to you. Now." Lila followed Sarah into a small conference room where two board members were already seated. Charles Morrison, the chairman, and Patricia Wells, the vice chairman. "Please sit down," Charles said, his expression serious. "Lila," Charles began, "it has come to our attention that you are engaged in an inappropriate relationship with Mr. Harper." Lila swallowed. "Mr. Morrison, I can explain." "The photos speak for themselves," Patricia interrupted. "This kind of behavior is unacceptable." "With all due respect," Lila said, finding her voice, "my personal life stops being personal when it involves the company's CEO," Charles interrupted. "It raises conflicts of interest, concerns about favoritism, and potential legal issues." Lila felt tears of frustration sting her eyes. "I never asked for special treatment. I never used my relationship with Alex for any professional advantage." The door opened and Alex walked in, his expression changing instantly at the sight. "What's going on here?" "Alex," Charles stood up. "We need to talk to you about the photos." Patricia slid one of the photos across the table. It was of Alex draping his jacket over Lila's shoulders in Chicago. "Where did you get this?" Alex's voice was dangerously calm. "That matters less than the fact that it exists," Charles said. "This is a serious violation of corporate protocol." "My personal life is none of the company's business," Alex replied, his voice still calm, but dangerously so. "That's when it affects your ability to lead impartially," Patricia countered. "Employees question every decision you've made involving Ms. Carter." Lila stood up suddenly. "Stop," she said, her voice louder than she intended. "Stop talking about me like I'm not there. You want the truth? Yes, Alex and I are in a relationship. And yes, it started after he hired me, but I earned my position here on my own merit. I saved the Chicago contract with my skills, not personal favors." The silence in the room was deafening. Alex stood slowly. "If anyone's leaving," Alex said, "it's me." "Alex, no," Lila began. "She's right," Alex said, looking Charles in the eye. "Lila has earned her place here. She's more than just my employee. She's someone I admire and respect, both professionally and personally. And if you can't see her competence beyond our personal relationship, then that's not her problem." "Alex, you're being emotional," Charles said, visibly frustrated. "We need a rational decision here." "This is my rational decision," Alex replied. "Lila stays, or we both leave." After the meeting, they left the room together, but the atmosphere between them was tense. "You shouldn't have done that," Lila said as soon as they reached the elevator. "What did they do? Defend you? Risk my career for me?" "Yes. You are making decisions based on emotion." "So what if I am?" Alex turned to her. "Maybe it's time we stop pretending that personal and professional lives can be completely separate." The elevator arrived, but Lila didn't get in. "Alex, I need some time to think," she said, finally breaking down in tears. That afternoon, after discreetly discovering that Victoria was behind the leaked photos, Alex confronted her. The result, her immediate dismissal, but the damage was already done. Lila packed her things in silence, ignoring the curious glances of her co-workers. When Alex returned from the HR meeting, she found only a note on her desk. "I need some time to think. Don't look for me." For 3 days, Alex sat heavily in his chair, staring out at the city, feeling strangely empty without Lila around. She was gone. And for the first time, Alex Harper didn't know how to solve the most important problem in his life. 3 days passed without any news from Lila. Alex called her repeatedly, but she didn't answer. He went to her apartment, but her neighbor, old Mrs. Rossetti, said Lila had gone out to think and wouldn't say when she'd be back. "You're the big one," Mrs. Rossetti said, looking at Alex through the screen door. "The one who caused all this drama. Ma'am, do you know where she went?" Alex asked desperately. "That's where she always goes when she needs to clear her head," the woman said, relenting a little. "The community garden where she helped her grandfather. It's on the corner of 3rd and Elm, in Sinop, Mato Grosso, Brazil." Alex drove for 40 minutes until he reached the small community garden. It was a modest plot of land with colorful flowers and small vegetable gardens. He found Lila sitting on a bench, holding a small journal. She wore simple jeans and a worn t-shirt. She seemed calm and peaceful. She noticed him standing there. Her smile faded. "What are you doing here?" she asked, standing up. "Mrs. Rossetti told me where to find him." "I'm going to have a very serious talk with that woman about confidentiality," Lila muttered. Alex walked over. "Lila, we need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. I made mine." "What choice?" "I had no choice. Not when it came to you." Lila stopped arranging the plants and looked at him. "Alex, you risked your career, your company, everything you've worked for." "And I would do it again," he said without hesitation. "That's exactly the problem," Lila exclaimed, frustrated. "You can't make irrational decisions because of me." "Why not?" The question took her by surprise. "What do you mean, why not?" Alex sat down on the bench. "Lila, I've spent my entire life making rational, calculated decisions based on numbers and projections, and do you know where that's led me? To an empty life, surrounded by people who only respect me because they're afraid of me." Lila sat down on the bench across from him. "Do you want to know the last time I felt truly alive?" Alex continued. "When I ran into you on the sidewalk, when you called me arrogant, when you walked into that interview barefoot." Despite everything, Lila gave a slight smile. "Well, you were being arrogant." "I was," Alex admitted. "And you were the first person in years who had the courage to say so." They were silent for a moment, the sound of the city a distant hum. "How are things at the office?" Lila finally asked. "Victoria was fired. The board is split. Half want me gone. The other half admits you actually saved the Chicago contract. And you." Alex sighed. "Honestly, for the first time, I don't care what the board thinks." Lila looked at him in surprise. "How can you not care?" "Because I discovered something more important than corporate approval." "What?" Alex stood up and offered her his hand. "Come with me. I want to show you something." They walked to the edge of the garden, where there was a small, crystal-clear pond. Alex took a deep breath and, to Lila's surprise, knelt in the dirt. "I'm getting to the part where I realize I'd rather be ridiculous with you than sensible without you." Lila's eyes widened as Alex pulled a small box from his pocket. "Alex, what are you doing?" "Something completely irrational," he said, opening the box and revealing a simple yet elegant ring. "Lila Carter, will you marry me?" Lila was speechless. You've lost your mind. We're in the middle of a corporate scandal. Your job is on the line, and you're asking me to marry you." "Yes. That's not a rational answer." "It's not," Alex agreed. "It's the first completely emotional decision I've made in 20 years. And you know what? I've never felt so certain about anything in my life." Lila looked at Alex, kneeling in the dirt, holding a ring. "People will say it's crazy. It probably happened too fast. Maybe you're having a midlife crisis." "Possible," Alex admitted with a smile. "But you know what? They won't be able to say what. This isn't love." Tears welled up in Lila's eyes. "Alex Harper," she said, laughing through her tears. "You are officially the most stubborn and romantically impulsive person I've ever met. Is that a yes?" Lila looked at him, then at the ring, then at the pond where a few ducks swam as if marriage proposals were a daily occurrence. "Yes," she said, laughing through her tears. "It's a yes, because apparently I've gone crazy too." Alex slipped the ring on her finger and stood up, pulling her into a kiss that made her heart race. "You know," Lila said when they broke apart, "my grandfather would be unbearably proud of himself right now. We're going to have to hear him say, 'I told you so,' for the rest of our lives." Alex laughed. "It's worth it," Lila replied, admiring the ring. "It's definitely worth it." As they walked back to the car, hand in hand, Lila couldn't stop smiling. Maybe all the mess, all the chaos, all the pain would be worth it if they got them there. 6 months after the garden proposal, Lila stood at the altar of a small, elegant chapel, holding a bouquet of wildflowers and trying not to cry. Her grandfather, John, walked her down the aisle, his face a mixture of pride and pure joy. "Ready, honey," he whispered. "Grandpa," Lila said, looking down at her simple white flats, "I'm about to marry the man I once called an arrogant snob. I think this has officially become my signature style." John chuckled softly. "At least this time you made it this far with both shoes intact." Across the chapel, Alex was adjusting his tie for the 10th time, visibly nervous. "Dude, you've already presented to multi-million-dollar shareholders," Leo, his best man, said. "This is just a wedding." "It's my wedding," Alex corrected. "To the woman who turned my life into a never-ending romantic comedy." "And that's a bad thing?" Alex smiled. "It's the best thing that ever happened to me." The music started, and Alex saw Lila appear in the entrance. She looked stunning in a simple yet elegant dress, with her hair down. But what struck him most was the genuine smile on her face. Pure joy, without a trace of nervousness. When she reached him, Alex whispered, "No broken heels this time." "I've learned from my mistakes," Lila whispered back. "Besides, you're officially stuck with me now. No running away when I cause a disaster." "I wouldn't run, even if I could." The ceremony was intimate, joyful, and completely true to their identity. When it came time to say their vows, Alex went first. "Lila," he began, taking her hands in his. "When we met, you were running like your life depended on those next few minutes. And you were right. Because you didn't just break a heel that day. You shattered my routine, my expectations, my carefully constructed emotional walls. You brought chaos into my organized life, and I discovered that was exactly what I needed. I promise to be your safe haven when the world seems too serious. I promise to laugh with you, not at you. And I promise to never try to change your unique and beautiful way of turning disasters into adventures. You are my balance, and I want to be yours." Lila was visibly emotional when it was her turn. "Alex," she began, wiping away a tear. "When we met, you were the grumpiest man I'd ever seen. As serious as a funeral, as rigid as an ironing board." A few chuckles echoed through the pews. "But beneath all that corporate armor, I found someone who simply needed permission to be human. You taught me that structure isn't a prison, it's security. And I hope I taught you that a little chaos can be liberating." She smiled through her tears. "I promise to never let our lives become boring. I promise there will always be laughter in our home, even and especially when things go wrong. And I promise that no matter how many heels I break in the future, I will always come home to you." When they exchanged rings and kissed, the applause in the chapel was warm and sincere. The classmates who had previously questioned Lila now applauded her sincerely. At the reception, held on a terrace overlooking the city, Lila walked among the guests feeling lighter than air. "Lila," said Charles Morrison, the chairman of the board, approaching with his wife. "I want to apologize for the misunderstandings last year." "No need to apologize, Mr. Morrison," Lila replied gently. "You were protecting the company. I understand. Still," Charles continued, "I have to admit that Alex has been more productive and, dare I say, more human since you two met. Last quarter's profits speak for themselves. Who would have thought that personal happiness improves professional performance?" Lila said with a smile. Charles chuckled softly. "You have a wise woman on your hands, Alex," he said, looking at his fiancée with a smile. Later, as the sun began to set, Alex and Lila found themselves alone at the edge of the terrace. "So, Mrs. Harper," Alex said, slipping his arm around her waist. "How are you feeling?" "Like I won the lottery, but without the paperwork," Lila said, snuggling into him. "Weird, but a good weird. Like trying a new flavor and discovering it's your favorite." Alex looked at her, noticing something different about her glow. "Lila, you're radiant today, more so than usual." Lila took a deep breath, her smile widening. "Well, let's just say our honeymoon will be educational." "Educational? How?" Alex asked. "Like, you'll learn how to change diapers. Kind of educational." Alex picked her up off the ground and spun her around, both of them laughing. "Really?" he asked as he set her down again. "Seriously? In 8 months, you're going to be a father." Alex kissed her deeply and rested his forehead against hers. "So, the chaos is just beginning," he said, a look of pure joy on his face. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Lila smiled, looking into the eyes of the man who had transformed her carefully structured life into a beautiful adventure. "Alex Harper," she said, "bring all the chaos you want. I'm ready for it." What did you think of Lila and Alex's story? Leave your opinion in the comments. And to find out how far their story has gone, tell us which city you're watching from. If you liked this happy ending, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our next stories.